So this is our buddy Mike Hildreth, who's playing a guitar that actually is owned by our buddy Joe, who works here in the shop with us. We literally sent this thing home with him, with Joe, and said, hey, play this through a real amp, let us know what it does, how it does, and he came back 2 days later and he's like, I just need to know how much I need to work to buy it. But this is probably my favorite model of the stuff that I build, which is we call the Eoad, which stands for Explorer on a Diet. And they're full-size Explorers, so it's not like you're reducing the size, but that thing weighs, I think, 6.5 pounds. Top and back are California redwood, giant sequoia. The core is Spanish cedar, neck is hard rock maple with it's all quartersawn flame rock maple, Macassar ebony fretboard. Pickups in this are Lawler Imperials, and then we made pickup rings out of stabilized redwood that we cut off from the tops of this thing too. The bridge is a Shaler Hans bridge, which I think is just the absolute best bridge in existence. The tuners, if I didn't say this already, are Hipshot grip lock locking. We use Tusk or Graphtec nuts, depending on what color we're going for. And then the finish is a really tough automotive grade polyurethane. Goes on thin, really shines, super durable. And then we've got the knobs on there, cutoffs we made from the body. And then we even do fun stuff like all of our side dots we make here in-house, and the dot markers on the knobs as well. And that is what we call the bright glow side dots, where they are glow-in-the-dark cores on a non-tarnishing silver exterior. It stays reflective. It's just, they're pretty fun. And then the wiring is kind of our standard wiring that we do for passive humbuckers, where we've got your toggle, your volume and tone control, and then we have the first switch. First mini switch is a coil tap for both pickups, and then the back switch is an all-series control that bypasses your toggle switch and turns all 4 coils, or 2 coils if you're in split coil mode, of the pickups into one giant kind of flame-throwing pickup. Kind of adds just a little boost. So the goal was to get as many tonal varieties with as little switching as possible. It's also, I think, one of Trey Anastasio's wirings that he had on some of his guitars. Fret wires, Jescar Gold Evo that lasts and lasts and lasts. Other fun stuff that we do with all the bridge builders is there is not a single screw that isn't a hex head corrosion resistant screw on that everywhere. And then the jacks that we use are actually designed for switchboard use, and they're good for, I think, 100,000 cycles before they have even the closest sign of failure. So it's overbuilt, ridiculously overdone, while still only weighing about 6.5 pounds. So you can play it all night, and it rips. You know, the Lawlers just sound like $1,000,000. We also do our own finishes in here that are on the necks that are a combination of a wood stabilizing agent, oil, and wax. And it takes us friggin' forever to put that stuff on. So let Mike play it, because
So it does sound pretty good. You can really hear the difference. You know, if I just roll back the volume a little bit.
That's the cool thing with the Lawlers, is they clean up really nice, and you don't necessarily need to have an overdrive going all the time. You can just do the cleanup with a volume control. And we put a treble bleed in there that's kind of designed by Kinman in Australia. I'm a little biased because my wife's from Australia. But his treble bleed circuit is really nice, so when you turn it off, you don't lose any tone. There's no sort of tone loss from 10 to the bottom of the taper. So you can actually get it to clean up with an amp where it's got a reactive front end like this sort of stuff. But you can also just make it kind of screaming too. So right, yeah, that's the full series mode. So that's single coil in series. So that's just the single coil mode right there.
Really hear the difference tonally. Okay, so I should probably play something.
Those pickups must be really legit. Are those high output?
No, they're actually just a medium output. It's kind of like a PAF if they cleaned up all the rough edges with it. Pretty sure it's Lawler's kind of one of their flagship models of pickups that they do. It's kind of their standard go-to humbucker. But no, it's just a regular medium output humbucker, but you don't need to have something screaming hot if you've got the right combination of everything.
It kind of reminds me of like a BBE sonic maximizer inside of a pickup in some ways.
And not to I mean, pickups sound great, but one of the things that I really try to emphasize in these builds is we do some strategic chambering on the inside of that changes the resonance qualities of the guitars. So the goal is to get every note to speak as fast as possible. So if you put this thing on an oscilloscope, hit a note, you'd typically see the initial hit, then the decline, the swell, and then the decay. And the goal is to move the peak of that swell as close to that initial hit as possible. And when we do the resonance chambering like we've done and try to tune it in combination with the Hans bridge is really when we kind of hit it, we're like, yes, this is what we're trying to do with this thing. It really makes each note speak with a clarity that I haven't really been able to experience on other guitars the same way. So it's real nerd stuff.
Sure.
And I'm probably wrong. So there's probably going to be somebody that plays this thing and like, Justin doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, which I would wholeheartedly agree with. But I'll at least say with enough confidence on the front end to make somebody believe it. But no, it really does change the way that the instrument speaks and vibrates.
Oh, it really does. That is some serious clarity going on. I hear that little bit of extra sustain after that. You called it like swell section?
Well, it's more of like the bloom of the note is kind of what you go for. Because sustain is one of the most overrated things in guitars ever. There's a great, if you've run out of everything in the world to watch on YouTube, Carl Thompson, who built basses for Les Claypool and Stanley Clarke, and he's just kind of one of these really influential bass builders, has this great thing where somebody interviewed him and he talked about sustain, and he's like, it's so dumb. He's like, when's the last time you just hit a note and let it hold for 30 seconds? He's like, what you really want is an instrument you can play all night, that doesn't hurt your shoulder, that sounds its best the whole time. And that's what I'm trying to do, is that, you know, anybody playing professional music for 3 hours a night, you don't want to have to go home and need a chiropractor appointment the next day. You want to have an instrument that doesn't make you slouch over, doesn't screw up your back, and sounds really good.
You got ergonomics in mind.
Ergonomics to a point. I mean, like, we're still talking about Explorers on this thing.
Yeah.
So
Seriously, bang up my elbow on those Explorers.
Yeah, so I mean, like, but it's more just the interaction of how the player reacts with the instrument. And like this one, I did a standard headstock on because I'm, you know, I think it just, on this particular one, I thought it would look better, but really I love doing reverse headstocks because when you talk about ergonomics, to tune this way is easier on your arm than to tune this way, where you're torquing muscles in your shoulder, things like that. So to do it from the underside, that's where ergonomics feels normal to me. And the same thing, cutaways on the lower ends of stuff. On some of our other guitars, we'll do little shapes on the front to kind of make access to the high frets a little bit easier. And then same thing with tummy cuts, overarm contours, things like that. But for the most part, like, I won't lie, ergonomics are almost a secondary thought. But there's a certain level of it that, yeah, that's totally part of it. Especially things like the Hans bridge on that guitar that are just super easy on your hand. But yeah, there's a little bit, but there's a, for the most part, it's just, we just want to make a really cool, good sounding guitar.
How about just crank that and we'll end on that riff. Crank it up.
Could somebody have this built with a floating tremolo?
Yeah, we've actually, one of the next ones we're doing for a guy, we actually have a Sophia tremolo going on his. So I just, for fixed bridge though, the Hans has just become my absolute favorite.
Yeah.
So it's good stuff. Thank you, Mike, by the way.